You might believe that when you quit porn, your brain will immediately start improving. So you think, okay, I've deleted the porn proper sites. You've stopped the behavior, and that you expect within a day or two, you're going to feel clearer, stronger, and more in control of yourself. But for many people, this first phase can actually feel worse instead of better. Sleep can become lighter or restless. Sexual thoughts and fantasy can appear more frequently. Urges can feel even louder than before, and sometimes erections even feel less reliable for a period of time. When that happens, it's easy to panic and to start wondering, did I make a mistake? Was I wrong to try to quit? This video is brought to you by my HarperCollins published book, Mind Over Explicit Matter. If you're ready to quit porn and reclaim your life mentally and physically, go over to drtrishleigh.com/book. I'm Dr. Trish Leigh. I'm here to tell you, no, you are not wrong. What's actually happening in your brain is not regression. It is your brain responding in a very specific way to the removal of supernormal stimulation and the pattern that it had adapted to for a very long time. The modern screen-based environment makes it especially confusing because stimulation no longer appears in the obvious places like the porn proper sites. Today, it shows up everywhere. Sexualized social media, short-form videos, and algorithm-driven feeds that continuously deliver sexualized imagery that is designed to capture your attention. So you might think this, I've stopped watching porn. Why would I feel worse? Well, you may have left one site, but the algorithm is miswiring your brain. You might think you stopped watching porn, but your brain may still be receiving constant novelty through scrolling, thirst trap content, and suggestive videos that appear every few minutes on your phone. That's why I love the term explicit matter. It can tend to be everywhere. This is the reality. Your brain did not evolve in a world with unlimited novelty. Historically, a person might encounter a relatively small number of potential partners throughout their entire lifetime. Today, the algorithm can deliver thousands of new faces and bodies every single week, each one slightly different and carefully optimized to grab your attention. Every time your brain encounters that novelty, it produces a dopamine response. And over time, your nervous system learns the rhythm of that stimulation pattern. It's unhealthy. The pattern becomes predictable. Stimulation arrives, dopamine spikes, the spike fades, and the brain begins looking for the next hit. When the cycle repeats frequently enough, your brain begins to expect that rhythm. High level intensity equals relief, repeat. When you remove the stimulation, your brain doesn't instantly return to balance. Instead, it enters into the period of recalibration. The system that had been trained to expect constant spikes of dopamine now has to reorganize itself without them. During that transition period, your nervous system can feel highly unstable, and instability often gets misinterpreted by people for failure, where in reality, your brain is adjusting to the new pattern. It is rewiring. One of the most common concerns during this phase involves erections. When your body does not respond the way that you expect it to, it is easy to start monitoring yourself and wondering, is something going wrong with my masculinity? Now that I'm not consuming pornography, maybe that's the problem? Well, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, which we often call PIED, has become increasingly common in the digital age, especially among people who grew up on high levels of online stimulation. When erections feel inconsistent after you stop using pornography or even similar forms of stimulation, the reaction is often fear, and stress. You might assume that something is broken about your body. It is not. It is your brain that is dysregulated. Arousal is not primarily a masculinity issue in and of itself. It is neurological timing. Pornography and algorithmic stimulation train your brain to respond to novelty, rapid visual cues, constant change. Your nervous system becomes accustomed to what's called fast dopamine, spikes, and rapid stimulation sequences. When those patterns disappear and things slow down, your brain has to relearn to respond now to slower, more natural signals and healthy attraction and connection. This relearning process and this retiming in your brain rarely happens super smoothly. Instead, there's bumps and hiccups in the road. Many times, this recalibration process feels uncertain and uneven, which is why many people mistakenly interpret the transition as regression rather than recalibration. That's why I like to say that just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. You're actually succeeding. So a helpful way to understand this is through a simple physical analogy. Imagine that you broke your arm and you had to wear a cast for a few months. The cast stabilizes the arm and it allows the bone to heal, but it also prevents the muscles from being used, and there's atrophy. When the cast finally comes off, if you've ever seen this, the arm is often skinny and it feels weak, and using it is so unfamiliar. But that weakness doesn't mean that the arm is still broken. It simply means that the muscles need time to rebuild their strength. The body has to relearn how to use that arm again. So, when it comes to stepping away from the supernormal stimulus of explicit content, the same thing happens. Your brain has to relearn timing. It's kind of like a cast for the arousal system. It provides a quick, predictable regulation period, and it makes arousal feel easy because the stimulation was always available when you used explicit matter. When the artificial support is removed, your nervous system can temporarily feel less stable. That's part of the cycle. If you immediately return to that high-level stimulation, every time that instability appears, your brain is never going to get the opportunity for natural, healthy regulation. This is why the process can feel messy and it can feel confusing, but it really helps to know what's happening underneath. When we break this down, you realize this is the moment when you're rebuilding something. When a house undergoes renovation, the middle phase rarely looks organized or finished. The walls are open, the wiring is exposed, and the environment becomes noisy and chaotic. My friend Ford is a custom home builder. He's actually building a neighborhood. He never wants owners to look at the house in the middle phase because it's a mess. But that mess leads to the rebuild that comes later on. Your brain behaves in a very similar way during recovery from overstimulation from the algorithm. Your sleep patterns may shift. They may feel worse. You may have intrusive thoughts or euphoric recall. Your nervous system may feel restless. There may be more irritability. But these experiences are actually signs of progress, not of failure. It is a sign that your brain is rewiring itself so that it can now thrive without that excessive hyperstimulation. It will no longer be surviving, it will be thriving. And if you can stay the course during this time of restabilization, your sleep will begin to deepen again. Your attention and focus will improve. Arousal will become responsive in the human element again, instead of forced by high dopamine spikes. So, if in the meantime, your sexual response is hit or miss, you can look forward to that timing being replaced and it coming back online, steadier than ever when your brain doesn't depend on high levels of dopamine to get you there. One of the reasons this process can be so challenging is that you are often trying to navigate it alone. When I tell the story in the briefing that I made this week about my daughter, Saoirse, she was recently struggling in an equestrian event where she needed new tools and new techniques that were provided by her coaches and trainers. If she was in it alone, she would have never gotten through that struggle to success. And thankfully, she had those things, so she was able to iterate over one day and be able to get there. Now, of course, that was getting through the one day. And now I just met with her trainer today. They want to have me take her to an equestrian sports psychologist to help her with mindset. Love it. Saoirse has committed to my Regulate First neuroregulation program, and she's excited about committing to it. I've always had her do it on or off. Now she wants to double down. She's going to use the tools, the techniques, and the neuroscience to rock out this time of transition into the higher version of herself. That's what I want for you too. Not relying on willpower, but instead regulating the brain itself to get you where you need to go. The most important thing to remember is this temporary phase of instability doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It actually means that everything is right. In many cases, it's the brain adjusting itself to the healthier regulation pattern. The noise that appears during this transition phase is not a signal to quit. It is a signal that the unwiring and the rewiring has begun. The process you have just embarked upon is the one that you need to. It is not failing. It is leveling up. It is often the fact that your brain has stepped away from that overstimulation and it's recalibrating itself to healthy stimulation and healthy arousal again. So stepping away from explicit matter, your goal was to not be dependent on high levels of dopamine from pornography or sexualized social media. Instead, you want your brain to be able to respond in a healthy way on its own timing in the real world. That's the pleasure pathway reset. So stay the course, my friend. Struggling does not mean failing. It means recalibration. It means unwire, rewire, hardwire. Now, if the struggle gets too much, I want you to know you need more tools, more techniques, and more support. You can find that at drtrishleigh.com. You can find it here on YouTube, where there's thousands of videos. If you want my help personally, you can meet with me and we can make a plan. We can map your brain. I can show you the damage and the dysfunction with your own eyes, with your own peepers, and then we can set the GPS for fast success. So until next time, remember, control your brain, or it will in fact control you. I'll see you then.